Hello everyone. Today inshallah we are going to start with a new chapter, chapter number 18. Of course, chapter number 18 will discuss three different topics or three different terms: spoilage, rework, and scrap. Of course, when we took job costing and process costing, when we took job costing and cost accounting 1, and we of course just took process costing, we had an assumption, or the discussion was upon a manufacturing organization or a manufacturing process that all the units that were produced were good units. We did not consider that we might have some defective units, correct? And we assumed that all the units that were produced are good and can be sold to the final customers. Now we are going to assume another thing. We are going to assume that not all the units are good, but some of the units will be defective. Therefore, we are going to consider the spoilage, the rework, and the scrap. For the process costing, which we just discussed in chapter number 17, and also to job costing, which we discussed in cost accounting 1. Therefore, first of all, what is the definition of spoilage? What is the definition of rework? And what is the definition of scrap? What do you think is the definition of spoilage? Excellent.
And it needs to be sold by a reduced price.
Excellent, excellent. Therefore, spoilage are defective units. What do you mean by defective units? They are units or produced units that are not or that will not meet the specifications of the final customer. Therefore, we cannot say on the spoilage or the units that are spoiled or defective, we cannot say that these units are good units that or that are going to be sold to the final customer. And of course, the spoilage could not be reworked. Therefore, this is the assumption, or this is the term of spoilage. It means that if we have defective units, that we cannot repair these defective units in order to transfer them from defective to good. Therefore, what do we mean by spoilage? Is the units of production, either fully, of course, or partially completed, that do not meet the specifications required by customers. Therefore, these are defective units that are or that does not meet the specifications of the final customer. Of course, for good units that are discarded or sold for reduced prices. Therefore, it cannot be reworked. This is the, as we are going to see, this is the difference between the rework and the spoilage. Therefore, according to the spoilage, these defective units will either be discarded without any value in return, or it could be sold for reduced prices. Because who among us would like to buy a defective unit? No one. Of course, these units could be sold to another manufacturers. For instance, if we are or we have a woodwork, for instance, or a woodworking manufacturing process that manufactures, for instance, these desks. Of course, if they have defective units, they may sell the wood for other manufacturers that would use the wood in their production process. And of course, this wood that was introduced into the production process will not be as the same as, or will not be as the same price as the new wood that would be purchased from the market. Therefore, it could be sold, but it would be sold by reduced prices. For instance, aluminum cans. If we have any defective units in aluminum cans, we can sell the aluminum to the aluminum manufacturers in order to recycle this aluminum and so on. Therefore, if the units are spoiled and cannot be reworked, if these units are defective, if these units does not meet the specifications of the final customers and cannot be repaired, therefore, these are called spoiled products or spoilage or spoiled units. Therefore, these units could be either discarded or it could be sold, but using a low price or a low unit price. Now let us consider rework. We have just discussed rework. It is the same as spoilage, but the rework could be repaired. This is the difference between spoilage and rework. Therefore, what is the definition of rework? It is the units of production, the same as the spoilage, that are defective or that do not meet the specifications required by customers, therefore defective, but which are subsequently repaired. Therefore, we can transfer these defective units or these units that are not or that does not meet the specifications of the final customers into good units that meet the specifications of the final customers. Of course, after the repair, after the rework. Of course, and it will be sold as good finished goods. For instance, if a computer manufacturer had a problem, or a car manufacturer, for instance, as we just heard in the last previous years, Toyota had recalled some of its products. Do you think that these products were discarded, is considered spoilage? No, they reworked these units and then sold them as finished goods again. Therefore, the rework could be recalled, repaired, and then resold as finished goods. Any questions? And of course, the only difference between rework and spoilage, according to the term, is that rework could be repaired, the spoilage could not be repaired. Rework will be sold as good finished goods, while as spoilage will be either discarded or will be sold at lower prices. Any questions? Now let us consider the third term, which is scrap. What do we mean by scrap? It is the residual material that results from manufacturing a product. For instance, let us consider the manufacturing of this desk. Of course, this desk is wood. Therefore, they or let us say they used wood in the manufacturing of this desk. They cut the wood in a specific manner. They did cut the wood in, let us say, in specific specifications in order to get this desk. Of course, cutting the wood would result in some residual material, some scrap or some, let us say, edges of the wood. This wood is called scrap because it is a residual material that were produced because of the manufacturing of the main product or the desk itself. Of course, the same thing with plastic. In molding plastic, for instance, when we mold plastic or when we manufacture plastic, it is the same thing. We cut the edges, for instance, and so on in order to shape the plastic to the shape that we want. Therefore, the edges are called scrap because they are residual material that result from the manufacturing of the main product. Of course, this scrap has a low total sales value compared with the total sales value of the main product. As we can see here, the scrap is a lot like the byproduct that we took in chapter number 16, because the scrap has a low sales value or has a low total sales value in relation or compared with the total sales value of the main product. Therefore, we are going to see how we are going to account for the scrap, but for now we need to understand that scrap is the residual material of any production process, and this residual material could be sold, not all the time, but this residual material could be sold, but the sales price or the sales value of this material is a lot low or a lot lower than the sales value of the main product. Any questions? Therefore, as we can see here, we have three different terms that we are going to discuss in this chapter: spoilage, rework, and scrap. Now, let us consider, first of all, spoilage. Of course, the first thing that we need to know about spoilage is that we need to classify this spoilage into two categories. The first to be as normal spoilage, and the second to be as abnormal spoilage. Of course, what is the difference between normal spoilage and abnormal spoilage? And do you think, before considering the terms normal and abnormal spoilage, do you think that it is important that we account for spoilage? Why wouldn't we say that these costs would be incurred and these costs will be, let us say, assigned to the different units, and that's it? Why do we need to know? Why do we need to account separately on the spoilage? Excellent, excellent. How we are going to control spoilage if we do not know what is the amount of the spoilage? Therefore, in order to manage the spoilage, in order to control the spoilage, and in order to try and decrease the spoilage, therefore, we need to account for this spoilage. This is an important thing that we need to consider.
Can we say that we should account for spoilage to reduce the overhead that is unknown?
The overhead that is unknown? How is an overhead unknown?
We will specify it. It will be like we will account it like a direct cost.
You need to consider an important point, that spoilage are not only or that it does not or is not only one category of costs. The spoilage units have took direct materials, have took direct labor, have took manufacturing overhead. But this unit will not be sold. Therefore, I need to know what are the costs that were incurred in producing this spoiled unit or in this defective unit, in order to understand or in order to answer the following question: why did we have a spoiled unit? Because if we ignored these costs or ignored these products that are defective and spoiled, that means that if we have 50% as spoiled units, no one would care. If we had 20% or 10% of our production as spoiled units, no one would care. Therefore, we need to account for these spoiled units or these defective units in order to control these defective units, in order to try and understand why do we have these defective units. Of course, if we understood why do we have these defective units, therefore we can decrease these defective units, or we can decrease the amount of costs that are at the end does not have any benefit for us.
I was answering the question that why we have extra costs. Because we have extra costs.
We cannot say extra cost. That the spoilage is because of the normal, or let us say there is no. We are going to consider two types of spoilage now: the normal spoilage and the abnormal spoilage. After discussing what is the normal spoilage and what is the abnormal spoilage, please ask me again your question, because I'm not going to jump now to conclusions before discussing these 2 points. Let us discuss the normal spoilage and the abnormal spoilage, and then please ask your question once more. Therefore, why do we need to account for the spoilage? As we said, we need to account for the spoilage in order to understand why do we have this spoilage. If we understood why do we have this spoilage, therefore we could find ways to try to decrease this spoilage, try to manage this spoilage, try to control this spoilage. Therefore, what is the difference between normal and abnormal spoilage? First of all, normal spoilage. From the name, normal. What do you think is normal spoilage? Yes. Normal spoilage is the spoilage that will be incurred in the normal course of any production process. In this part of spoilage, this percentage of spoilage or this part of spoilage could not be controlled. This part of spoilage could not be avoided if we are doing everything right, everything as as it should be, we are going to incur normal spoilage. Why? Because as we said, normal spoilage is unavoidable. Normal spoilage, of course, is unavoidable. Therefore, if we have an efficient production process, 100% efficient production process, we would have normal spoilage. Therefore, as we can see here, the normal spoilage is the spoilage inherent in a particular production process and arises under efficient operating conditions. This means that we are doing everything right. We do not have any errors, we do not have any problems, and still yet we might have some or we might incur some of the spoilage, which is in this case normal spoilage. Now, on the other hand, what would be abnormal spoilage? It is the quite opposite of the normal spoilage. The abnormal spoilage is?
The spoilage that does not inherit in a particular production.
Excellent.
And it could be avoided by the efficient operation.
Excellent, excellent. Therefore, on the other hand, the opposite of normal spoilage is abnormal spoilage. Of course, abnormal spoilage could be controlled. The abnormal spoilage could be avoided. If we have an efficient production, if we have a 100% efficient production, we would not have any abnormal spoilage. Therefore, in this case, these costs could be, or this spoilage, or these defective units could be avoided. These defective units could be, let us say, controlled. Why? Because we could increase our efficiency. If we increased our efficiency, if we decreased our problems, if we decreased our errors, therefore the abnormal spoilage will definitely decrease. This could not be said on the normal spoilage, because no matter how efficient or how much efficient the production is, we will have normal spoilage, or we might have normal spoilage. But in this case, or the case of abnormal spoilage, if we have, or the abnormal spoilage would be incurred because of the inefficiencies in the production process, because of the errors, because of the problems that could be avoided and that could be, let us say, solved within the production process. Any questions? Therefore, as we can see here, the abnormal spoilage is spoilage that is not inherent in a particular production process and would not arise under normal operating conditions. If we have normal operating conditions, if we have efficient production process, therefore we would not have any abnormal spoilage. But because of errors, because of some of the problems that we might face in the production process, we might have abnormal spoilage. Therefore, now ask your question again. You said that we need to recognize spoilage in order to recognize the costs that are not assigned, I think.
No, if we didn't account the spoilage,
yes,
we did not account it. There will a cost ahead that we would not allocate it for.
It would be allocated. These costs would be allocated, but it would be allocated to the good units, and we would not know why these costs are high or are higher than our standard costs, for instance. Because let us consider this example. If we have costs by the amount of $1,000 or $5,000, these are spoilage, or this amount is spoilage. If I do not care to count this spoilage, I would dedicate, or I would allocate the 5,000 without knowing that this 5,000 is because of the spoilage onto the different units that has been finished. Because we have total costs, and the total cost would be assigned to the products, whether these costs are for the spoilage or for the good units. But here now, as we are going to see, we are going to separate between the cost of good units and the cost of the spoiled units. Why? In order to manage these, or this amount of spoilage, in order to control this amount of spoilage, and in order to understand why this spoilage occurs, in order to decrease our spoilage. Of course, this is according to the abnormal spoilage. Of course, because we cannot control the normal, we only can control the abnormal. Therefore, when we say we need to understand this spoilage, therefore, this is concerned with the abnormal spoilage, not the normal spoilage, because the normal spoilage cannot be avoided and cannot be controlled. Of course, the normal spoilage is, let us say, is determined according to a conscious decision by the management. Of course, they would say, if we need or if we operate this production process by this speed, by these specifications, by these machines, by this way, we are going to accept a normal percentage or a normal part as normal spoilage. Therefore, they make a conscious, let us say, decision that if the production is, let us say, is fast, we are going to have more, for instance, normal spoilage. Because as you can know, or as you know, that the faster the machine goes, or as the faster the machine operates, as the faster the labor works, they would most definitely have more defective units. In this case, because of the normal operation of this production process, because the decision was by the management in order to have this production process go this fast. Therefore, they will accept any spoilage because of this normal operations of this operation or this production process. But anything that is not controlled by a conscious decision, because of problems, because of errors and so on, that could be avoided, of course, that could be, let us say, controlled otherwise, this would be considered as abnormal spoilage.
There's also more specification that result in spoilage.
More complication in the, excellent, more complication of the production process. As we said, not only the speed by which the operation is operating, but also the way the operation is designed also has, or let us say, also affects the normal spoilage rate. Therefore, the normal spoilage is a percentage, is a margin that will not be avoided if the production process has a specific specifications, has a specific speed, has a specific way of operation, and so on. If we, of course, these are decisions by the management. Therefore, the design is according to the decision of management. Let us say, the speed of the operation is according to the decision by the management, and so on. Therefore, these conscious decisions would designate or determine the manufacturing process. Now, after the, let us say, the determination of the manufacturing process or the production process, as it is, we are going to know, or we are going to accept some of the spoilage as normal spoilage because of these specifications within this production process. Therefore, the normal spoilage cannot be avoided. This is the main point. Normal spoilage cannot be avoided, cannot be controlled, but according to the normal operations of the operation, or according to the manufacturing process or the production process. This is an important point to take into consideration. It is not avoidable, it is not controllable according to the specifications or according to the normal operations of this production process. While as the abnormal spoilage is the spoilage that could be avoided, that could be controlled. Of course, the abnormal spoilage is not because of the normal operations of the production process. It is because of some problems, some errors within the production process and so on that could be avoided and could be controlled. Any questions? Therefore, as we can see here, this is the difference between normal spoilage and abnormal spoilage. Now, what do you think? Now, after, of course, accounting for the spoilage, we have designated that the spoilage have two categories, normal and abnormal. What do you think we need to do with the cost of the normal spoilage and the abnormal spoilage? Of course, we said that we need to account for this spoilage. We need to count what is the amount of normal spoilage and what is the amount of normal spoilage. What do you think we need to do as accountants now with the normal spoilage and with abnormal spoilage? What do you think?
The normal should be the cost of the normal spoilage would be accounted for by putting it on the goods.
On the good units. Excellent, excellent. Therefore, the normal or the cost of normal spoilage would be assigned on good units. Why?
Because either way it will
Because we will not have any good units unless we are going to incur some sort of normal spoilage. Because we said that the normal spoilage is from the normal operations. Therefore, we could not get any good units unless we incur some sort of normal spoilage. Therefore, this normal spoilage is because of the normal operations and should be allocated and assigned to the good units. While on the other hand, this type of spoilage is not because of the normal operations, but because of errors, because of problems within, because some sort of inefficiencies within the production process. Therefore, this type of abnormal spoilage or this type of spoilage, which is the abnormal spoilage, should be considered as excellent. Therefore, we are going to consider this as a loss from abnormal spoilage, which would be presented in the income statement as a separate line item. Therefore, as we can see here, the normal spoilage will be treated differently from the abnormal spoilage, because the normal spoilage is because of the normal operations, and we could not let us say have good units unless incurring some sort of normal spoilage. Therefore, the normal spoilage would be allocated on these good units, while as the abnormal spoilage could be avoided, could be controlled. Therefore, having any abnormal spoilage will be, let us say, a loss in the point of view of the organization, and would be accounted for as loss from abnormal spoilage, and will be presented in the income statement as a separate line item. Any questions? Yes.
It's result from the inefficient operation.
Yes.
Maybe the supervisor or management or the labor have a fruit of it. Like, it should take the responsibility for it.
Of course. We are going to, and after knowing that we have abnormal spoilage, now we need, or we can answer the question, why did we have this abnormal spoilage? Therefore, if we can come up with the reasons of having abnormal spoilage, therefore we can learn from these mistakes. But if we say that we do not, or we have spoilage and we are not going to consider that we have any spoilage within our production, or we are not going to account for this spoilage. We as managers, we as, let us say, laborers and let us say accountants, we know that we have spoilage. But if we decide not to account for this spoilage, therefore we would have a problem in understanding the reasons behind these or behind this spoilage. Therefore, we would allocate these costs without knowing the reasons. Therefore, we will still incur these costs, and we will not held anyone responsible to these costs or to these spoiled units or these defective units. Therefore, this is the problem in not accounting for the spoilage. Therefore, we need to account for the spoilage, as we said, in order to understand what are the types of the spoilage and what are the reasons behind the spoilage. Of course, if it is controllable, therefore we need to answer the question, why did we have these spoiled units or defective units. Of course, if it is uncontrollable or unavoidable, these are normal spoilage, or this is normal spoilage, and we will not, let us say, exert any effort in knowing why did we have this normal spoilage. Because we said the normal spoilage is because of the normal operations. Therefore, we will not exert any effort, we will not exert any time to understand why do we have this normal spoilage. It is normal. While as the abnormal spoilage, because it is avoidable, we can avoid it, we can control it, therefore we need to exert the effort to understand why do we have this this sort of spoilage and the ways to decrease this type of spoilage. Any questions? Let us take a quick illustration. In January 2012, Mendoza Plastics incurs cost of $615,000 to produce 20,500 units. Of course, if I'm not going to account for the spoilage, we are going to divide the 615,000 by the good units, not the 20,500, the 20,000, as we are going to just see, if I'm not going to account for the spoilage. Of these 20,500 units, 20,000 are good units. Therefore, if I'm not going to assign, if I'm not going to account for the spoilage, I'm going to divide the 615,000 by the 20,000. Because these are the cost of the operation. But we said in order to control, in order to understand the spoilage, we need to account for this spoilage. Therefore, let us see what are the number of units that are spoiled and what are the units or the number of units that are good. From the 20,500, 20,000 are good units, 500 are spoiled. Now we need to determine from the 500 what is the amount that is normal and what is the amount that is abnormal. Mendoza has no beginning inventory and no ending inventory that month. Of the 500 spoiled units, as we can see here, 400 units are spoiled because the injection molding machines are unable to manufacture good casings 100% of the time. Therefore, any machine could not produce 100% defective-free products all the time. We always have defective units. Consider a printer in your home, for instance. Sometimes you do everything right. You have the ink in the printer. You have the stack of papers in the printer. Everything is normal. Nothing, you do not have any problems with it within the printer. And sometimes the printer would print some defective papers. Correct or not? Therefore, in this case, you did everything right. But because a machine is a machine, therefore, sometimes we would have some defective units. Therefore, we have 400 units of the 500 that are because of the normal operations of the organization. Therefore, these 400 are considered normal spoilage. That is, these units are spoiled even though the machines were run carefully and efficiently. We do not have any problems in efficiency. We do not have any problems in the operation, but we cannot help but to have some sort of spoiled units or spoiled costs. The remaining 100 units are spoiled because of what? Because of machine breakdowns, because of operator errors. Therefore, these are avoidable. Of course, we can avoid the breakdowns or the machine breakdowns by maintenance, for instance. Maybe we did not maintain the machines as we should be, or as they should be. Therefore, we have the breakdowns because of some sort of inefficiency that we had, or operator errors, which are errors of the labor that, let us say, operate these machines and so on. Therefore, as we can see here, 100 is abnormal, 400 is normal. So now what do you think is or would be the normal cause, and what would be the abnormal cause? Of course, the normal cause should be designated or should be determined in order to be added on to the cause of good units. while as the abnormal cost should be known or should be determined in order to be presented in the income statement as loss from abnormal spoilage. Therefore, what do you think we need to do in this case?
First, we will know the price per unit or
The cost per unit, excellent. Therefore, we have $615,000 divided by the total number of units, not the 20,000 only. If we are not going to account for the spoilage, we are going to divide by the 20,000. But here we are going to account for the spoilage in order to determine what is the cost of good units and what is the cost of abnormal spoilage. Therefore, we are going to divide by the 20,500 units. In this case, we would have $30 per unit, whether it is spoiled or not, whether it is a good unit or a spoiled unit. Now, let us consider the cost of normal spoilage. The normal spoilage is $30 multiplied by 400 units. 400 units. We have 500 spoiled, 400 is normal, and 100 is abnormal. Therefore, we are going now to consider the normal spoilage as $30, which is the cost per unit, multiplied by the number of units as normal spoilage. Therefore, of course, $12,000 is the normal spoilage. Is that it? No, we need to add the $12,000 onto the good units. Therefore, the good units would be 20,000 units multiplied by $30, which would be $600,000. These are the cost of good units, but we know we could not have reached or we could not have produced these good units unless we had normal spoilage. Therefore, these two would be the cost of units or finished units. These are the costs of finished units, or the cost of good units that are transferred, or in this case, finished. Now, the abnormal spoilage. Of course, we have 100 units multiplied by $30, therefore $3,000, which will be considered as a loss. Of course, which will be presented in the income statement. So, a lot of reports or cost reports consider the normal spoilage as a percentage from good units. Why do they calculate or determine the percentage of normal spoilage from good units? Because as we said earlier, we will not have any normal spoilage, or we would not have, any good units unless we incur some sort of normal spoilage. That's why a lot of the books, or like the book we have, and a lot of cost reports, they determine the percentage of normal spoilage as a percentage from good units. Therefore, what would be the percent of normal spoilage here? It would be 400 units divided by the good units by the number of 20,000. Therefore, this is the normal spoilage percentage. As we are going now to see, all the normal spoilage percentage will be from good units. This is the way that we are going to present our normal spoilage. Any questions? Of course, we can calculate it by several means, let us say. But this is the best way to present the normal spoilage, because we know the normal spoilage is incurred because of the good units. Therefore, we are going to present the spoilage or the normal spoilage as a percentage from the good units. Okay? Now let us consider the spoilage or having a spoilage in a process costing system. Of course, we just finished chapter number 17, which considers the process costing. As we said, that process costing in step number 1 determines the physical units, correct? It determines what are, or from where did we get these units, and from or where did these units go, correct? Of course, we considered what has started and finished, what has come from the beginning inventory, and what has stayed as ending work in process. Now we need to add two things. We need to add that we have normal spoilage, and we need to add that we have abnormal spoilage. And of course, we are going to consider the same thing here. The abnormal spoilage is a separate line in step number 5, while as the normal spoilage will be added to the costs of good units. Let us consider the following. Another point that should be emphasized here in a process costing system, which is called an inspection point. What do we mean by inspection point? It is the point of production, or it is the point in production at which units are inspected. Therefore, at that point, we are going to determine whether the units are good or spoiled. This would be the inspection point. And of course, the inspection point could be in any point in the production process. It could be in, let us say, the 10% percentage. Or it could be at the 40 percentage. Or it could be at the 60 percentage or the 100 percentage. Therefore, the inspection point is the point at which we deem the units to be good or spoiled. Of course, here, units of normal spoilage can be counted or not counted when computing output units, physical or equivalent, in a process costing system. Of course, in a process costing system, we have the choice to count or not count the normal spoilage. Of course, if we are not going to count the normal spoilage will be considered the cost of the normal spoilage will be considered directly as a cost of good units. Why? Because the abnormal spoilage will be counted and will be calculated separately. Therefore, if we have taken the abnormal spoilage, the normal spoilage will stay in the good units. But it would be preferred to count for all spoilage, whether it is normal or abnormal. What is the inspection point? As we said, it is the stage of production process at which products are examined to determine whether they are acceptable or unacceptable, to determine whether they are spoiled or not spoiled, whether they are good or spoiled. Spoilage is typically assumed to occur at the stage of completion where inspection takes place. This is an important or very important point. Let us consider an example. The production process, of course, the conversion costs are added evenly. The direct materials are added at the beginning, for instance, and the inspection point is at the 70%. And of course, we found out after the inspection point that we have, for instance, 1,000 units as spoiled. How much these units did take from the direct materials and how much did they take from the conversion costs? All the direct materials, excellent. And Excellent. And 70% of conversion cost. Therefore, hence, this point, spoilage is typically assumed to occur at the stage of completion where inspection takes place. This is not the point, I'm sorry. Never mind. An important point, as we said, to determine is that the percentage of completion of the spoilage equals the percentage of the inspection point. If we have the inspection point at the 70% and the conversion costs, for instance, are added evenly, therefore it would stop at the 70%. Because if we deem anything as spoiled, we are not going to let these units to continue with the production process. We are going to stop these units. Therefore, the 70% inspection point, at this point, at the 70% point, we are going to determine whether these units are good or spoiled. If they are good, we are going to let them continue with the production process. If they are not good, if they are spoiled or defective, therefore, we are not going to let these units to continue with the production process. Therefore, at this point, or the point of the inspection, the spoiled units will stop, will not continue with the production process. Therefore, they will take only the costs up to the inspection point, and they will not continue any further. Any questions? Of course, now let us consider the same steps. Of course, we are now using the process costing. We are now going to use the same steps, the same inventory valuation methods, whether the weighted average or the first in, first out. Everything would be the same, only now we are going to consider that we have another category of units, which is the spoiled units, whether they are normal or abnormal spoilage. Therefore, in step number 1, this is would be the addition on step number 1, is to designate or determine what would be the spoiled units and what would be the good units. Of course, we are going to summarize the flow of physical units. From the summarization, we are going to identify the normal and the abnormal spoilage. Of course, in step number 2, we are going also to compute the equivalent units. But here, we are not only going to compute the equivalent units to the started and completed and to the ending work in process. We are going also to compute it for, or determine it or compute it for the normal and the abnormal spoilage. Therefore, we are going to compute output in terms of equivalent units. Spoiled units are included in the computation of output units. Therefore, because in step number 1 we have introduced the abnormal and the abnormal spoilage, in step number 2 we are going to consider and we are going to calculate the equivalent units for this or for these categories of units. In step number 3, same as what we took in chapter number 17. We will not have anything different in step number 3. Step number 4 also, we would not have anything different in step number 4. In step number 5 now, we are going to have 3 different things. The first, we need to assign the good units that are completed. What is the cost of the good units that are completed? Of course, the good units that are completed are 2 things. It would be the good units or costs plus the normal spoilage that were incurred in the normal operations. Of course, number 2, which is the abnormal spoilage. Number 3 is the ending work in process. Of course, the same thing, but we only have one category more, or one more category, which is the spoilage units, or the cost of spoiled units. The normal would be assigned to the good units, and the abnormal would be designated or determined as a separate line item, as we are going to see. Okay, by this we have come to the end of this lecture. Inshallah, we are going to continue the next time. Thank you for listening.